My name is Jennifer Zhao. I'm the Executive Director at the International Center of the Capital Region. We're a nonprofit organization focused on connecting our capital region to the world, and we're located right here in the Hudson Valley Community College. So today I'm honored and very excited to introduce to you many distinguished guests. We're going to have a panel discussion on connecting diverse communities to sustainable careers. And I just want to say a few words about the organization who is actually sponsoring this event. The International Labor Organization, Office for the United States and Canada, has partnered with the World Affairs Councils of America. We're a member of the World Affairs Councils of America. The objective of this program is to add value to conversations about international issues that are priorities to U.S. audiences. This includes meeting with businesses, local government officials, professionals, civil society organizations, and students to communicate the importance and relevance of issues in the world of work to wider U.S. audiences. So we have with us here Cassidy, Director of the International Labor Organization Office for U.S. and Canada. He is visiting 14 different cities around this country, and Albany in the capital region is one of the 14. And earlier today, he had a tour of the Education Opportunity Center in Troy, and he had a chance to speak to Dr. Ramsani at Hudson Valley Community College right here as well. So it's my pleasure also to introduce to you our panelists of the day. I'll start way on your left, on my right, Mr. Brian Williams, the Executive Director of the Workforce Development Board of the Capital Region. We also have Professor Donna Barron. She's an Associate Professor of Chemistry and Biology here in Hudson Valley Community College. Kevin Cassidy, we already introduced earlier. Mr. Jason Benitez. He's a VP of Diversity and Inclusion at the Capital Region Chamber. Dr. Joe Dragone, the Senior Executive at Capital Region BOCES, and Jessica MacKrell, the Director of Employee Inclusion and, what was the other one?
Employee Engagement and Inclusion.
Yes, employee engagement and inclusion at Plug Power. So we have a wide variety of representation here. Brian will be our moderator. So I will pass the baton to you, Brian. Thank you so much.
I'm going to go from where you are, Jennifer, just to make it easier for the panelists.
That sounds good. Yeah, it's hard for me because of the microphone and I'm short, so.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to the International Center of the Capital Region here for really coming up with this idea of how important this is in terms of our region and in terms of really our society as a whole. And you know, when Jennifer came to me to talk about this, I'm very big on words, and words matter, right? And the word sustainability was in the title of today's event for really two, perhaps even three different reasons. Sustainable in terms of we're talking about sustainable energy and the green jobs challenge that's in New York State, and all of the green jobs that are really going to be coming into our region over the next few years. Sustainability in my world talks about family sustaining careers. How do we take individuals and skill them up so they can support their families? And then also sustainability for the businesses. Human capital is just as important as machinery. So workforce development is economic development. We passed an infrastructure bill in this country to build roads and bridges and all of these things, but we need people to do that, right? We have some very lofty goals from our Green Jobs Challenge and what that looks like. And if we don't have individuals trained to do those jobs, then we're not going to be able to hit those lofty goals. And from a demographic standpoint, if you read any of the MC data and any of the other data that's out there, we all know baby boomers didn't have as many kids as their parents did, right? And baby boomers were retiring at 3 times the rate that they were prior to the pandemic. So we have a supply problem in terms of individuals. And I say in the capital region here, statistics, you can say statistics however you want to say them, right? The unemployment rate here in the capital region is around 3%. I'm not a big fan of the unemployment rate statistic because you can make that say really what you want it to say. I like to look more at what the labor participation rate is in our region. And that's individuals that are connected to full-time employment, and again, back to the family sustaining jobs. Those that are working not involuntarily part-time jobs, those that want to be working full-time jobs. And we're around 70% at best with that, which means there's 30% of our population that is disconnected from good family jobs and opportunities that are in many cases right in their backyard. So empowerment and education in my world is key in that end. So I thank you to the panelists for all being here today. Kevin, I might put you on the spot just in the beginning, just to maybe give, if you don't mind, your organization's 10,000-foot view from a workforce standpoint.
So thank you very much, and thank you everyone for coming this evening. The International Labor Organization, as you can imagine, deals with many different countries. So we don't actually have projects in the United States. My role in Washington is normally a political role. But the work we're doing around the world is looking at those who are in developing countries and emerging economies. They're looking at people who are in the formal as well as informal economy. We have a lot of challenges that we are facing. Everything from child labor issues, forced labor, human trafficking, looking at occupational safety and health, informality, which is also a big problem as well too. If people are in the informal economy, they don't know if they're going to have a job the next day. They may make a few dollars, maybe they'll just get a bit of food for their day's worth of labor. They're not contributing into the fiscal contributions into the government through their taxes. They're not protected by law. So most of the people that we're dealing with around the world, we're really in quite dire circumstances. In the industrial market economy countries, we're not immune from the challenges in the labor market. And certainly before COVID had struck, we were looking at the future of work from these mega drivers of change. Back in 2019, the ILO turned 100. We are the oldest institution in the UN system, and we have a very unique tripartite model, which means governments, workers, and employers, actors of the real economy, sit at the table and negotiate. So when we were looking at this, we saw things like climate change. Right? This is going to have a major impact. Severe weather, whatever you want to call it, but this is real. This is happening, and it's going to cause challenges for people around the world. We were looking at the introduction of digital technology, and that is displacing workers. Even now with generative AI, looking at the further applications and the implications of that for the world of work. But many of the people that we're working with are at the more basic level, how to put food on the table every day for themselves and for their families. So the challenges that we have are really in governance, how work is structured. And I think that's really quite important. We don't think about it too much here because we do have these systems in place. You do have offices that can assist. You have organizations that are paid maybe through the government to set up training facilities, as we saw today, which is excellent. But in terms of the challenges that we face, I think by and large, we are really concerned about a number of issues. The climate change is driving labor mobility. People are leaving their countries to try to find work. They're getting into very vulnerable circumstances and vulnerable to the fact that they may be trafficked. People are unable to integrate into global supply chains. Women are leaving the workforce in massive numbers. We need to increase the number of women in the workforce, have access to finance for women to create their own businesses so that they can participate more fully. And to pause on women for a moment to say that 3 of the big challenges that we see for women around the world, number one problem is really pay equity, pay for work of equal value, which is different than just pay equity. We also see childcare being a big issue. This is a challenge for women in entering the workforce. And the other one is on violence and harassment in the workplace. This is a big challenge into the workforce if we're addressing this and have policies and have prescriptions in place. So the differences between the industrialized economy is workforce, is getting good, talented people in that workforce. But at a time where things are changing, it was mentioned that the older cohort is going out, younger cohort is coming in. Younger people are looking at well-being. They're looking at work-life balance. They're looking at companies that they respect. They want to work for those companies that are doing the right thing. For the older generation, we're phasing out. That knowledge is walking out the door. That's an asset that should not be squandered. I think that's something that we need to look at as well too, because there's a lot of knowledge embedded in people working 30, 40 years. So are we optimistic? I would say we're cautiously optimistic that the world, I mean, something has to move forward. We can't just stop. But nonetheless, I mean, I'll stop right there. But just to say that we do have lots of challenges, but I do think that there are a lot of organizations out there, a lot of companies in particular, that are starting to take on these challenges. And of course, since we also have a tripartite, the trade unions are also looking after their workers. You know, they provide higher levels of pay, and with the Infrastructure Development Act and the Inflation Reduction, there's lots of money going out there. So those who are in the trades are actually going to be doing quite well for themselves over the next few years. That hasn't hit the ground yet, but it certainly will help. But we're lucky here because we have the financing, and many countries do not.
Thanks, Kevin. So, for the panelists, and whoever wants to take this, that'd be great. What do you think are the major challenges in the workforce development world in the next 5 to 10 years?
Jump in, thank you. Good evening, everybody, and I'm here to try to bring a DEI lens to the conversation, but I think that what Brian and Kevin have touched on, I've heard it referred to in the literature as the silver tsunami, where you know the number of people reaching retirement age, even before COVID, far outnumbers the number of people coming up in early career pipelines. And then COVID has only exacerbated that more, as we see the mention of, you know, a lot of particularly women not returning to the workforce after COVID. So I think that we're at a point where employers cannot choose to be picky. It's very much an employee's market. And to the point that Kevin made with this ESG, you know, the younger generation of workforce, diversity, equity, and inclusion matters more to them, and they want to choose to align themselves with an organizations whose ideals and kind of core tenets align with theirs. So I think that just sheer numbers isn't going to be a challenge right off the bat, partly because I am looking at notes here. I also think the rapid acceleration and evolution of technology, particularly AI, is far outpacing humans' ability as well as workforce's ability to adapt. You know, there'll be soon coming monumental shifts on the horizon impacting almost all industries. Many jobs will become obsolete, though many new sectors and jobs will emerge. Can we keep in front of that curve? I don't know if some of you have seen the recent 2020 piece, or 60 Minutes piece, where they went behind the curtain at Google, so to speak, and really got you know, unfiltered access to what Google is working on, including some chatbots and things. It was both phenomenally frightening and also fascinating at the same time, because it really, this AI has the ability to go wherever human nature can go, and we know that can be either good or bad. And I think that future success will be aided by our ability to offer wraparound services, frankly, and help remove barriers for those entering or wanting to enter the workforce, whether that's child care support, more liberal leave policies, more hybrid flexibility, and in particularly given tonight's topic, you know, addressing the language barriers that may exist in outreach and onboarding. You know, some folks and sectors are just a little bit behind that curve, so to speak. So I think, at least from where I stand, those will be some of the big challenges in the next decade or so.
Sure. Joe, you're
It's you know, we're essentially a tech hub here in the capital region. So we need to work together to fill those needs.
And again, when you say tech hub, we want to ensure that folks all have access to those jobs, even when they think they can't do them, right?
Yes, and you know, that brings me to a REACH program that we're doing with SUNY. So SUNY has a program where they're challenging faculty to recruit underrepresented students ages 25 to 64. So that's a very specific age range, not a typical student. So we're not reaching down in the high schools, we're really reaching those populations that might be working part-time. They might be part of that 30% that's not in that workforce. So we're attending events that target this population and discussing job-ready positions and programs. So the micro-credentials to get into those positions. And we're following up with those folks, and I'm working with some great other faculty in automotive and manufacturing and construction. And I have to say that employers are hiring our students faster than we can get them out. A local employer just hired all of my biotech students before graduation, so they're all starting. Yeah, they're really, it's a problem for the other biotech companies, but you know it's good for them. So it's really, you know, we're seeing in construction that they're getting signing bonuses and instant health care, and really high pay. So we're really seeing some interesting ways that employers are reaching out as well.
You know, you bring up the outreach, Donna, and I think, Jason, this wasn't on the list, so I'm gonna hit you with a curveball here. I think our trusted messengers in the community are really key for getting this message out about opportunities. Thoughts from your standpoint, Jason, that you've seen success in terms of who are those trusted messengers in our communities?
It's a good question, it's a good curveball. I would say that the three biggest sectors in our area are education, higher ed, healthcare, and working for the government. So I think, you know, to the point of collaboration and really thinking about the region as a region, you know, I would like to believe that 99% of the time, those sources can be trusted to be representing the best, you know, future intentions of our region and what's coming down the pipeline. And, you know, I think that as a chamber where I work, we've been on an intentional DEI journey to ensure that what we're doing, not only in our resources and services, but the impact that we're having is realized by a broader cross-section of our community. You can have the interesting dynamic where you have a region whose businesses are being successful, but when you dig beneath the surface, the people in those communities are not realizing that success as much as businesses are. I think that there's been some increased awareness in chamber worlds, and I'm on monthly calls with chambers all around the country that are realizing that dynamic and working hard to address that, to make sure that, yes, our businesses first and foremost are thriving, but also that people in our communities have opportunities. So, you know, I would hope that more and more the chamber is becoming that trusted kind of voice.
So how do we get to the people? Who's that trusted messenger we should be focusing on?
Again, I think it takes time. I think it depends on sector, it depends on the population that you're speaking about and with, and then how much or how little trust, rapport, and relationship has been built there. So we've been trying to work more with the reentry population, just whether it's CEOs, the local Center for Employment Opportunities. They work with, you know, previously incarcerated individuals, justice impacted individuals. So I think it depends on the sector, the type of job, and, you know, how much or how little that relationship has been there before. So yes, I think there is a little bit of trust building or rapport building that needs to happen first for that messaging that you really want to get to the person, to land with them and be received. But so, you know, again, I think it depends, but I think sectors who are focused on a particular, whether it be women, whether it be, you know, immigrants or international employees, I think the benefit is being able to really cater the lens in outreach and messaging and onboarding. And I think that a generation ago that didn't sit well for some folks. They felt like maybe it was, you know, giving one group a leg up, or, you know, if this group is getting a bigger piece of the pie, then there's gonna be somebody else that's getting a smaller piece of the pie. I'm hoping we move beyond that thinking and realize that if we wanna operate like a region and think like a region, we have to kind of work in this together, you know, to the point that Joe and others have made today, so.
Yeah, I think, you know, interestingly, you know, as Joe alluded to, some of us being in this world for a long time, I'm looking day we're 28, right? You know, I think from a business perspective, right? If 15 years ago, we had the same conversation, businesses wouldn't know where to start, right? Because this isn't their world. You know, if you're a manufacturing business, you make things, right? You're not talking about supportive services. You're not talking about childcare with your employees. You're not talking about belonging with your employees. We want you to come in, do your work, go home. That's what we want. And now we're having these discussions. I know, Jason, you're having these discussions every day with businesses, but Jess, you know, I know Plug Power has kind of taken this on really full steam ahead, right? What outcomes has Plug seen and realized as part of all your initiatives?
So some of the things that we've seen, because we've really looked at how to start our journey, and that's what it is, right? We always refer to DEI as a journey because it's never ending, as it should be. And we've really started building the foundation. And what we've seen so far, we take the pulse of our employees quarterly, and what we've started to see most recently is that we're getting more survey results from employees, meaning more employees are participating in engagement surveys, as well as commenting and giving us great actionable feedback. What that says to us is that they're noticing, right? They're giving us feedback because they're noticing that we're taking the feedback and we're putting it to use. So each quarter we are analyzing those results, tying it to actions and communicating that. And so that may seem like something small, employees participating in a survey, right? And actually like participating, commenting, but it's actually a big deal because they're trusting us. They're starting to trust that when they participate in the survey that we, as Plug Power, that we're gonna take those comments and we're gonna do something about it, and we are. And that trust between employees and an organization, that's hard to build, right? Especially, I mean, think about all of the big things that happened during COVID. These are all, diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, belonging, these are huge words. These are not something that an organization can just come in and say, here we go, everything's fixed. It has to start with trust, and that's the hardest thing to build. And so we've started with simple, I say it's simple, but it's so hard. Trusting communication. Employees wanted more communication. So we have employees on the manufacturing floor. The last thing they want to do is check employee email on their breaks, right? I would not want to. We put digital displays on the manufacturing floor so that we can meet them where they are. We're going to stream communications to them. Easy, problem solved, right? They said that they needed something, we're delivering. And we're going to continue to do that, listen and take action and build that trust. And then we're going to continue to build with ERGs and other platforms. But that's where we are now, and that's actually a huge step. And I'm really excited about it. So.
Folks who may not know what ERGs are, do you?
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm so excited. I'm not even telling you. It's a surprise. They're employee resource groups. So they're groups of employees with a similar passion or maybe an affinity group, but there is a business need for them. So, and we're going to have a global platform because we are a global organization. So this is also something new for Plug. We're going to give employees the opportunity globally to interact in a social way, which is also I get very excited about this. All this belonging and working together, this is my space, like the workforce development stuff. But this platform, employees are going to be able to reach out to their global counterparts and talk about their weekend, share resources about things that are important to them, about change, about climate, about social justice, all of those things. We're going to give employees that outlet because, again, they asked for it, and we're going to provide it because it's important.
I love the passion, right?
Yeah.
I'm a very, no, honestly, I'm a very, for those that know me, I'm a very passionate person. And you have to find what your passion is and dovetail yourself into that. So, you know, as we're coming up on 7 o'clock, I'm looking at Jennifer just to make sure. This is a question that I think that's important that I want to kind of ask everyone at the panel. And we may get all the same answers, we may get many different answers. And Kevin, I'll start with you. What do you think the #1 skill is that a worker needs to have over the next 10 years?
Learning how to learn. I think it's, you know, the market is changing. I think people need new skills all the time. So we talk about credentialing, stacking credentialing, and so, you know, this is going to be the most important aspect in that. I do want to add just 2 other things, if I may. And listening to Jess about this as well, you know, I talked before about social dialogue. It's dialogue, right? Talking to people at the workplace, respecting people's opinions, and so, you know, workers, like owners of the company, they want to see it succeed. So they become stakeholders in the company. They may not be shareholders, but if that company goes under, their job goes away. So I think it's really important to mine the knowledge of the people who are in that organization, and treating them as if they are respected increases their productivity and increases the retention of those people as well too. And then I just want to give a quick example of an example that I just seen in Seattle at a brewery. And I'm not going to tell you why I was there, but I went there because I was off board. But I went up and I ordered a beer, and I was looking for the wage, you know, the tip jar, and it wasn't there. And then I looked up at a little sign, wage policy, $26 an hour. Why we don't accept tips. And I spoke to the lady who owns the place, Gay Gilmore, and she was saying, look, people shouldn't be at the mercy of a tip policy, right? And in Europe, nobody ever tips. And Americans who go there, they love you because you tip, and they don't expect it. But she said, look, it reduces that belief that I have to please everybody. The customer is always right, which for women working in hospitality puts them at a disproportionate disadvantage, that they have to be nice to the person and put up with all the harassment that goes with that. So it gave them a living wage. It meant that nobody had to, you know, fight for the Saturday night shift. It meant that the people who were working there, men and women, were not being harassed. And without prompting, I just asked the gentleman who served it to me, I said, how is this working out? He said, oh, it's fantastic, it's great, I'm able to choose my hours, I can, you know, afford my apartment in Seattle, you know, I mean, this is the other thing, is wages, right? So listening to employees, understanding what their concerns are, putting in these policies in place, and she said, look, it's not easy because I'm not making the profits that other companies might, but I'm listening to them, and people love it, and it really is working for us and our team, and we have absolute 100% staff retention. I was blown away. For 2 years, she said, we have all the same staff that are here, and anybody who has left has come back. So I think it is, you know, being able to learn, and ourselves learning in our institutions and so on.
Donna?
So
#1 skill.
You know, I have to say, I'm hearing from the employers that are our partners, they want functional adults. And what does that mean? Arriving on time, and, you know, arriving on time, and really, the soft skills, that's really what it is. Communication, team skills, being able to work in a team, and that goes back down, we've implemented in our pedagogy in classes where they work in teams and active learning. So, you know, we are listening and working to, you know, we're being more strict with arriving to class on time and, you know, turning things in on time. Because if they can get away with it at Hudson Valley, then they can get away with it at work, and it just, they can't allow that, they have deadlines. So it's, you know, communication is really where it's at. Yeah. If you can't make a deadline, communicate to your boss or your professor before that deadline. So it's being that adult, and part of that being adult is those team skills.
Sure, having those foundational skills.
Yes, yeah.
Jason, what do you think?
You know, I was thinking off the fly as you said that, and the word adaptability came to mind, and I think adaptability for the employee in the types of skills that are gonna be needed, and as, you know, technology and sectors continue to emerge and evolve, the employees ability to adapt to what's gonna be needed from them. But I also think, on the employer's side, adapting, policies, procedures, and workplace culture in a way that's going to continue to have the org thrive. And then I also think there's adaptability in not just the skills that are gonna be needed, but as we see more of a concentrated effort to include previously marginalized and minoritized groups in workforce development, the adaptability can also look like what is the workplace culture like? If there's a previously male-dominated sector and now we're seeing more women enter that, the men in that sector need to adapt to that emerging reality. So I think adaptability for me comes to mind, and with the fast-paced nature of everything that's been going on socially, culturally, politically, technology-wise, our ability to kind of just deal with the curveballs that are coming at us and still press forward. So I would say adaptability.
Joe, you work with many businesses and employers across multiple industries. What are you seeing as a common thread?
We use, it's interesting, we use an employability profile for all of our graduates have an employability profile. And it's, and it's again, you call it what you want. So on the 4 C's, critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, communication, is the soft skills, is that we rate all of those. And Kevin didn't know what I was gonna say, and he didn't know what I was gonna say, and I didn't know what he was gonna say. But we have 5 commitments that our organization leans on. And one of them is continuous improvement. And we share it internally, but we press it with our students. And what we say is when we define that value, or the commitment I should say, it's about being the best at getting better. Right, so it's constantly, what does improvement mean? What do these things mean? How can you make things tangible, these concepts tangible? What does it mean for value? What does it mean for service? What does it mean for leadership excellence? The rest of our commitments. The commitment to improvement, again, is the best at getting better. And part of what we do with Skills USA and the rest of the organizations that we're involved with is employers come in, they have interviews on the spot. The training kids always talk about the work they're into because it's so dynamic, especially in the trades fields as well. You don't fix a car for us old folks, you don't fix a car like you did when we were kids. And that continues to evolve. You're doing software upgrades now. So how much are you constantly working to get better? And the goal needs to be, you want to be the best at doing that. And it's interesting, you're an employer and a child expresses what, they say, tell me about what you're involved in, how you learn things, and that comes across of how we do this, this, and this, and we're still doing this, we're trying to do this. And it focuses our employees, which conveys to our students, that you're never plateauing, you're never standing still. If you're standing still, you're moving backwards, right? So you're always trying to be able to get better at what you do, and that is something that I've never been an employer that doesn't value that. There's the tangible stuff, and we make sure we have it, but that becomes an inherent trait, and it's always something that's important.
Jess, I know you're not on the talent acquisition side, but you see the employees once they're hired, right?
Absolutely.
What do you feel is the #1 skill you see really managers down
Yeah.
that's needed?
I would have to agree with continuous learning. But even from a DEI perspective, and that would be even from a leader standpoint, right? Not even for the employees, but also for making sure that our leaders in the future and our employees are continuously learning on how to adapt and work in teams and diverse organizations so that they can continue to be productive, make sure that people are feeling that sense of belonging, and excel.
Interesting, no one gave us a hard skill, right? No one said they need to know how to weld. They need to know how to read a tape measure. They need to know a computer program. It was all the foundational skills. And I've done some videos in the past with some businesses, and I'll call out Global Foundries. They couldn't make it here tonight, they were supposed to be on the panel. But we recently interviewed a young female engineer for a Connect with Careers video we were doing for high school students. And I didn't prod her, and I asked her, I said, what is the #1 skill you use every single day in your job? Now, remember, she is an engineer, Clarkson degree. communication. That was her number one skill that she used every single day, because she had to communicate with her bosses, she had to communicate with the tool manufacturers, she had to communicate with the technicians that were using the tools that she was creating and whatnot. So these are all things that in our workforce ecosystem, we work on every single day. A recent study by USDOL stated that 85% of the skills that businesses need are across all industries. And those are communication, critical thinking, adaptability, everything we set up here. The other 15% can be trained very easily. So I'd like to thank our panel, Donna, Kevin, Jason, Joe, Jessica. And Jennifer, to be continued on this conversation, we don't want this to be just that one-off, right? You know, as Joe and Donna and others alluded to, that, you know, we are one region. We all work very collaboratively together. My colleagues across the state often say, oh, you're the capital region, you guys just do everything perfectly. I said, yes, we do, because we all get in the sandbox together. And we don't just get in the sandbox together, we actually build the sandcastle. So, thank you all and have a great evening.